Well, we've made it to part 7 of a practical guide for teaching distance learning via Tandberg. And this we're going to just talk about that presentation mode just a little bit more and some of the ins and outs of that. Now, I hope that you're not falling asleep like some people here. So anyway, hopefully I haven't bored you to that point yet. Anyway, this is part 7 of 8. Now, basically, I wanted to talk about thinking about what you want the screens to look like. Now, on the other end, if you want the instructor camera on one screen and the document camera on the other, here's what you want to do. You want to first select the instructor camera to be the main source, that is what's currently on the screen. Then you go to the presentation mode and you select secondary camera, and that's going to put the document camera on the other screen on the far end. Now, at the very beginning, we talked about how the secondary camera is actually referred to as the document camera and the student camera. So in the system, in the Tandberg system, those are both referred to as a secondary camera. And so here's how it works. Whatever source has been used most recently is going to be what the system engages when you select that secondary camera. So whatever it was on last, of those two options, the document camera or the student camera, that's the one that will be engaged. So here is how this might work. Suppose that you want the document camera in presentation mode, but the student camera comes on instead. In other words, you want to have the instructor camera on one screen and the document camera on the other, but when you activate it, it's now pointed at the students. Here's what you do. Turn off presentation mode, select the document camera as the main source, and what that's going to do is that's going to now assign the document camera to be that secondary camera option in the Tandberg setting. Then go back to the instructor camera to make that the main source, and now go into presentation mode and select secondary camera. This will now activate that document camera as your presentation mode. Now, here's another example. If you want the instructor camera in the computer, what you want to do is you want to select instructor camera to be the main source. Then you want to go to presentation mode and select computer for that presentation mode. Now, you could select computer as your main source and turn on the main camera as your presentation source. The problem is then on the near end, they're going to be looking at what you engaged in the presentation mode. That is, they're going to be looking at the instructor camera instead of the computer. So if you want the instructor camera and the computer, the trick is to start with the instructor camera on, then turn on the computer in presentation mode. Now, here's a cool shortcut button. There's a button right here on the remote that has a little computer on it. This is a button that automatically selects the computer in presentation mode. And it'll also turn off presentation mode if it's currently on. And so this is kind of a nice thing if you use a lot of PowerPoints or if you use the computer a lot. This is a button that you can just press and it'll automatically do what you want it to do. So the key is to have the instructor camera on. When you press this button, it should turn on the computer in the near end, and it should leave the instructor and then turn on the computer in the far end. So this is a nice kind of shortcut. Now say that you wanted the instructor camera and the student camera. In this case, what you want to do is first select the student camera so that it's now the source of the secondary camera. It's now assigned to the secondary camera. Then select the instructor camera, go to presentation mode, and turn on the secondary camera. One more example here. If you wanted the student camera and the computer, select the student camera so it's the secondary source, then select the computer for the main source, then go to presentation mode and select secondary camera for the presentation source. Here's an observation, and this is something that you'll kind of, experience. You'll never want, or you'll never need to select the instructor camera for the presentation mode, that is as the presentation source. Because what that would do is that would put you on screen in the near end. You don't need to be on screen in the near end because they're seeing you in person, right? So this is an option that you have, but you'll never need to use. So here is one thing as well. Suppose that you wanted to have the document camera on one screen and the computer on the other. Now, the problem is that you can make this happen for the students on the far end, but you can't have this for the students on the near end. When the classes are connected, one of the cameras on the near end is always going to be that far end source. You're going to be looking at the students on the far end. So you have to make a choice for what you want the students to see on the near end. Now, if you're in presentation mode, you can switch the screens that is in the non-presentation mode source. So the presentation mode will always fix that one camera and you can switch the other one. But due to the fact that that secondary camera can be one of two things, this can lead to some really strange outcomes. Here is what I recommend. You can experiment with this to see how it works for you, like toggling between two different sources in presentation mode. But what might work better is to just go out of presentation mode and go back in with what you want it to look like. So this is something that I would recommend that you kind of play around with, but it can lead to some kind of weird stuff. I've gotten into some weird things, I mean, which you can get, around by just exiting presentation mode, but it does some kind of strange things. It's like the system doesn't know what it wants to do. Anyway, I hope that this has given some interesting examples and have sort of fleshed out this idea of presentation mode a little bit more. Anyway, thanks for watching.